Take one.
Yeah.
We're
Take one.
rolling.
Action.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Izzy, this is The Independent Girls, and we are here with part 2 of our series, The Truth About Reality. Today's hot subject is fast fashion, with our special guest Amber, who is the owner of Timeless Wear and an advocate of promoting that the fashion industry becomes circular. So, what is fast fashion?
So fast fashion is kind of like a definition that's come out of the current state of the fashion industry, because beforehand, like probably about 30 years ago in like the 1990s and 80s, you'd only have like 1 or 2 seasons of fashion like per year. But like now in the present day, it's like about 4 seasons a year, probably more than that. And it's just like the constant making of like new clothing. The thing is like all of this clothing that's made is like mass produced, and it's like really poor quality.
Yeah.
So it lasts like a couple of wears, and also like the people who make the clothing are really, really underpaid. So it will kind of like vary, but like a lot of the workers have to work like 12 hours a day in like really poor conditions. I would say that's probably like
The overall
good,
summary.
yeah, overall description. There's like more you can go into, but yeah.
So I think then like there is a difference between sustainable and ethical fashion.
With like, I mean, like they do kind of like interlink,
Yeah.
for sure, but I would say ethical fashion would be more about workers' rights and the morality of like the fashion industry.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks at like making sure that workers are like fairly paid and like fairly treated. You could also include like racism in the fashion industry with that as well.
Yeah.
So, like, one thing again, like you said about the Black Lives Matter movement, I was definitely like leaving out with my kind of like work with sustainable fashion more than I should have. It's just like the fact that like people of color get disproportionately like treated bad in like the fast fashion industry. And like with ethical fashion, it looks at like paying people all equally.
Fashion is more the production of the clothing, isn't it?
Yeah, like if you want to look at it that way, sustainable fashion is to do with more like the destruction of like the environment and like using up resources, and how the fashion industry contributes to carbon emissions rising and stuff like that. But I mean, they are interlinked as well, because like a lot of brands would say that like sustainability includes like workers being paid fairly.
It's the second most polluting industry after oil, isn't it?
Yeah, I had that like written down on my little notes actually, because like that's just like really shocking. Like you wouldn't think that the fashion industry is like the second worst industry. Like you'd think, oh, like planes or something like that, but actually it's fashion.
It's just, and you think how many like I'm near 2 airports at the moment, and even we've just come out of lockdown, and the amount of planes and helicopters which go flying over, and you think fashion is worse than that, even when you're thinking, oh, there's literally planes flying left, right and centre.
Exactly. And like same with like shipping and stuff like that, because I remember I read that like apparently going on cruises is like the worst like type of holiday you could go on in terms of like the environment. And if you think about like cargo and like how often boats and planes are like shipping each day just like goods and stuff like that, you would think that like there'd be the most destructive, but it's actually like fashion, which is crazy.
So what effect is fast fashion having on the environment? We've kind of spoken about it, but
this, like we both mentioned about the CO2 emissions, see like the second worst polluting one. But other ways that it's really bad is just like the amount of chemicals that are really released into the environment. So obviously like we all know how bad plastic is, and like how bad the plastic is in the oceans. I learned about on my biology course actually was obviously about like microplastics, and like the biggest source of this is actually from our clothing.
Really?
Yeah, so crazy. Like you wouldn't even associate like clothing with plastic.
Yeah, I did this thing about plastics in clothing actually, and it was like it gets stuck in the washing machine.
It's like the little fibers in the clothing, when like your clothing's made out of polyester, they kind of come unraveled, and then they get released into like the water system, and then obviously that goes out to the ocean. But I was just like really shocked that that was like the main cause of like microplastics, and like obviously we don't really know like the main effects of like what that's going to mean for us just yet, but like from like basic scientific studies that I saw in biology, like it doesn't really look that good. With wildlife, like when they ingest the microplastics, it's like toxic for them. And obviously it just doesn't seem like a good thing that like we as humans would also be like consuming the microplastics.
Yeah, that's the scary thing, is that we don't actually know what it's going to mean for us in the long term.
Exactly.
And we can all do our part, but it's definitely like we need everyone to collaborate and like unite on this to actually make a massive difference. Like you say, the water wastage, the cheap labour, all of them clothes which don't get sold, or even if they've got little defects wrong with them, they just get thrown, don't they?
Exactly, it's so wasteful. Fast fashion is like really bad for the environment because it just uses up so many resources. So like obviously, like you said about how much water gets wasted on like a t-shirt. One thing that I read about was there's like this lake called like the Aral Sea, and because of the cotton industry in that area, the lake's completely dried up.
Really?
Yeah, over like 30 years or something, and like it's had like a detrimental effect on like the local people. And like apparently it's caused loads of pollution, and like obviously like the locals use it for fishing, so like the economy's just crashed and stuff like that. Of the people who are involved in like, I don't know, like growing cotton for like making t-shirts for like Primark or something, they're going to be using like loads of pesticides and like chemicals, and that is obviously like really toxic for them. Like it causes like cancer and like birth defects and stuff like that, and you obviously don't hear about that at all. Like many people don't realize that that's what's happening on the other side of the world. There's literally like so many resources now. Like been really helpful for me recently is there's like sustainable influencers now. They always post about like petitions and just like keep reminding you of like what you can do. So it's just like really helpful, because like it's easy to just like think that it's done. Like it's the same with like the Black Lives Matter. Oh, I've like shared some things, so like it's fine now, like it's all done. But like it's consistent work, isn't it?
You yourself have a slow fashion brand, Timeless Wear?
Yeah, I'd say it's like slow fashion, and then obviously sustainable as well.
Which is so cool, and everyone needs to go and check it out. So what inspired you to create your brand, and what do you think makes it so successful?
Well, I think I really just kind of like fell into doing it, because I kind of like, I can't even remember how I downloaded Depop, but I just kind of like got it to resell some clothing. And like I remember at the time, actually, this is kind of like full circle, but I was actually like selling dresses that I'd like bought for parties for like one occasion. And then I was like, I don't want it anymore. Like it was stuff from like Missguided, and it'd be a party and we'd be like, so what are you gonna buy? Like I'm looking at this dress on Pretty Little Thing, but I don't know.
Literally.
So bad. I kind of like sold things like that, and then I remember my dad took me to a car boot, because like he's a record collector. And I just like found some clothes there that like, I thought could be good to like sell on. Like kind of like, I don't know, like a Nike windbreaker or something like that, like a classic. And I saw people were doing it really seriously on Depop, so I was like, oh, that looks like something that I'd quite like to do, because it's kind of like flexible way of like making money. During university it was like so good, because obviously it's not like if you're feeling really hungover or something after a night out, it's not like you have to go into work. When I went to uni especially, like I did get really into like fashion and reselling, and it's just kind of like all fallen into place, really. Like it's just kind of like luck.
You've had it for quite a long time as well, haven't you?
I made it like at the beginning of uni, like properly set up the account, so it's literally going to be like 4 years, I think, in like October or something, so I'm gonna have to do like an anniversary.
The last question that I want to ask you is, how can people do their bit to shop more responsibly and dress more sustainably?
We've all been conditioned just like for our whole lives to like constantly buy, even as being as young as like in year 7 or something, like buying an outfit specifically for like a mufti day.
Yeah.
Like going charity shopping is quite good because it is like really cheap.
That's the thing, is that people think that cheaper clothing like Missguided or Boohoo is an affordable option, but there's such a bigger cost to that, and actually shopping in charity shops probably cheaper. Like, you get more for your money because you're getting good clothes.
It definitely is cheaper, like especially if you go charity shopping, 'cause you can get like some really cheap items. Like if you go around like Bexhill or like Hastings Town Centre, you can pick up items for like £3. Say you saw something on Missguided or like Pretty Little Thing that you thought looked really nice. If you go on Depop and like search it in, chances are there's actually someone who's like bought it but doesn't want it anymore.
It's a good thing about Depop, it's made buying secondhand cool.
Definitely. But I am understanding a lot, like especially a lot recently, that like it is quite unaffordable for some people, and like it does appear to be like quite expensive.
I think people have realised they can make money.
Exactly, like there are some cases where people do like really overcharge. So I do understand that like it's not for everyone, and like it's something that all kind of like secondhand resellers need to work on, is like making things more affordable for people. If you kind of like know exactly what you're looking for, then you can find it a lot cheaper. I think it's more if you're like having a browse and like not really sure, then that's when you can end up spending more money.
Is there any brands that you'd recommend which are sustainable, and like brands to avoid as well? A lot of brands say that they're more sustainable and more ethical, but a lot of them are just goals and they haven't been reached yet.
I've got like examples, but you kind of like need to watch out for like certain things that would probably like imply that a company is kind of like unsustainable. And that's usually just like if a brand's like really big, is producing like a huge quantity of clothing, like Nasty Girl, Mango, a lot of the high street brands really. Even like for example like H&M have like supposedly released like a conscious collection, and they're like claiming that it's sustainable, but they're only focusing on like an aspect of sustainability. So like they only focus on the fact that like the material is like made of cotton, but I mean they're still underpaying people to make the garments, and also they're probably like really bad quality, so like they're not made to last.
I think they said that they were going to make it fully sustainable by 2030, but again, it's just being cautious about that, because fast fashion and the fashion industry isn't going to become sustainable overnight. Like, it will take time, but it's going to also, like you say, it's making sure that it's every aspect of the industry which is being looked at.
Exactly. And what I personally think as well is like, I think that those big companies don't really have the capacity to be sustainable because of the way that they run. Like there's no way that the CEOs and like the people at the very top are going to be able to make that much money if they're not exploiting someone at some point. I remember I did a live stream with my friend Fez, who runs this like account called Sustainable Sundays, and like she kind of like said the same thing as well. Like she just thinks that their whole business model is just like, it doesn't really have the capacity to be sustainable. And that's why it's good for people to go towards more independent brands instead of like a really huge company now. Since lockdown and the fact that I've been like focusing so much on my brand, I have definitely noticed that like I think this is what's going to be like the future, and like the direction of fashion now is like just people buying from like loads of independent smaller brands. But like there's so many smaller brands now, and I think it's thanks to like Instagram kind of like making it accessible for people to like market their own things.
We're promoting small brands on our page.
Yeah, so like
Yeah,
support local businesses.
Yeah.
I think especially being in Bristol, I'm like, obviously you probably saw this as well, like they're all about like independent, like shop local, like Stokes Craft, they love it.
Yeah.
So I think because of that, it's kind of like made me aware like how important it is to like support locally.
Yeah, definitely.
Even my mum, like during lockdown, she started to like buy from loads of like independent businesses.
Yeah.
And she's like, we need to support local.
No, it's so true. You do really need to support local.
So one brand that I really love at the moment that I think like a lot of people who would like who watch this is a brand called Emerald. What she does is like all of her clothing is made from like offcuts.
Wow.
Of it's like factory offcuts, so it's all like fabrics that were going to be wasted or like thrown away. She's like reusing them, and like she does all of the tailoring herself.
Amazing.
And they're just like really fun.
Yeah.
Have like tops and stuff like that, and yeah, it's just really cool.
Yeah.
You probably know of like Tala.
Yeah.
Tala would probably be quite good for people because it's like gym wear,
Yeah.
but it's made from like recycled bottles or something like that. I think that's just good because it's like gym wear, and there's not really any brands like that for gym wear at the moment.
Everyone wears gym wear all the time.
Exactly.
We live in
so a third brand that I quite like, this is like a bit more expensive, but they're called like Frankie Collective, and like what they do is they take, again, like damaged kind of vintage clothing from like, I don't know, like Nike or Adidas, and then like rework it into outfits. So they did like a zip up top made from like ex-Nike clothing. They even made like mini handbags out of like Nike clothing. Yeah, I just think it's so creative, and like it's just really fun.
Yeah, but thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone needs to go and check out Timeless Wear. Get shopping, guys. Sustainably and ethically.
Buy my stuff.